It's Monday again, you know what that means. Part 4 of the top 110 hidden gems. And this is the last part that has 25 games, by the way. 35 to 11. Let's get into this. The only thing I have to say before we get started, I have two things actually. One, if you have not seen the other 3 parts, I don't know what you're doing watching this part first. So go watch the other 3. And 2, before we get started, be sure to like this video, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, and leave a comment, and you'll be a loyal subscriber.
Because that's Kevin Durant's new number with the Nets after he announced yesterday that he would no longer wear number 35.
The game you see right now is Meteos, and it might not look too fun, but it's a puzzle game that actually changes some aspects. Meteos is one of those puzzle games where you can swap blocks, but you send some blocks flying, which I don't see too often. It's a lot of fun, and if you're not interested yet, this game was made by Masahiro goddamn Sakurai. Yes, that's Sakurai. That's Sakurai. And that's Sakurai. Got you interested now, didn't I? Plus, this dude, we need him in Smash. "110 games, and Sonic is only on here once. And that game happens to be an arcade game, which was never ported to home consoles. And it's called Sega Sonic the Hedgehog." Yeah, that's pretty much the name. It doesn't really particularly have a name. Sega Sonic the Hedgehog is an interesting Sonic game where Sonic gets stuck inside of a trap, and he has to escape it. This time, though, it's in an isometric view, like the dreaded Sonic Labyrinth or 3D Blast. But before you say anything about those games, this is way better than those two. Plus, it's got Muddy the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel. And I believe they're playable as well, which they weren't playable again until Sonic Mania Plus. This is a Sonic game that I'm kind of surprised not too many people talk about it as one of the greats.
All 33 of us.
Say something. See you, old man.
We all like Jack Black, right? He also had a video game called Brutal Legend. A lot of people don't like this game, but I have to disagree. I think it's a lot of fun, and it does a lot of stuff very well. Brutal Legend is a third-person action-adventure game that is a lot of fun, and you have 2 weapons, an axe and an electrical guitar, which is quite literally electrical. It's also worth noting that the bosses are really cool too, and it just shows Jack Black's appreciation and love for video games.
Machine has appeared in homes across America.
Redouble his power.
Man, do I love Castlevania Bloodlines. Might be one of my favorite games in the whole series. Castlevania Bloodlines was like the first Castlevania game not on a Nintendo console, and it also doesn't have you playing as the Belmonts, but rather than John Morris from the Morris clan, which is an offshoot of the Belmont clan. Definitely did not get that statement from the Wikipedia page. As well as Eric Lacard. That one having a staff, giving a bit of a different gameplay style than what Castlevania is used to, and it works very well. It's not higher because while this game is fucking awesome, and I definitely recommend you play this game, Castlevania Bloodlines was re-released numerous times, giving its hidden gem value, I guess you can call it that, sort of diminishing it a bit, as it's been re-released on, say, like, the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, or the Sega Genesis Mini, even. That gives you more the reason to check this game out. Oh yeah, and this isn't going to be the only time you hear Castlevania on this list. Maybe not even on this part.
So what games are inside the appropriately named 31-in-1 bootleg cartridge? Well, you have no idea.
When you say the word scat, it's mostly referring to shit, specifically animal shit. However, that shouldn't be the case when talking about the NES game S.C.A.T, or it's an acronym for Special Cybernetic Attack Team. Look, I know you don't want to call it Special Cybernetic Attack Team, but call it literally anything but SCAT. That probably threw many people off. Anyways, don't let it, cause it's a very fun game. SCAT, or Special Cybernetic Attack Team, is a shoot 'em up, I guess you can call it that, where you're flying around in a city shooting up bad guys. It's a unique and smooth feeling, and probably one of the best shmups on the NES, with great music as well. The last thing this game is SCAT. Do try it out. This is the last time I'm covering more than one entrant at once, but in my list of the 20 best NES games that I still think hold some truth to it, I had Startropics on there. Startropics 2. But the more I thought about it, Startropics 1 and 2 aren't too different. So I'm putting them both together here. With these Startropics games, you might instantly think Zelda, and it does take heavy inspiration from Zelda, but it seems to be in less of a fantasy setting. Me thinking Startropics 2 is a bit better, but very similar though. It's good that Nintendo remembers Startropics, as they've re-released it on the NES Classic as well as the Nintendo Switch Online, though it doesn't seem that most gamers remember it though. And as for Startropics 2, I think they've forgot about that one, unfortunately. But I'm reminding you guys not to.
Smoke the whole damn pound. I'ma need another one. Eyes closed, I won't come down.
Okay, you see Wario here. Now you see Bomberman here. What do these have in common? Not much, but they happen to cross over with a Game Boy game. That is called Wario Blast featuring Bomberman. Wario Blast featuring Bomberman plays just like a Bomberman game, but you have the choice to play as Wario, as Wario invades Bomberman's world. How he got there, I have no fucking clue, but don't worry about it. Despite being the bad guy though, yes, as I just said, you can play as Wario, which I find cool. I always like it how you can play as the bad guy in some games. This game is great, and it's a great Bomberman game, a great Wario game, and a great Game Boy game. And one hell of an underrated one.
And today we're going to take a look at the Dell P-Series desktop display. It's a 27-inch monitor. It's powered by Type-C. You can even recharge your laptop.
Batman has had some great games, whether you're talking about the Arkham games or the NES game. But he's got some other bad games that we're not going to talk about. But nobody talks about the Adventures of Batman and Robin for the SNES, specifically. The Genesis version is not good at all, but The Adventures of Batman and Robin for the SNES is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, still one of many you'll see on this list. There's a lot of those here. And has the cartoony yet serious nature of the show. So if you like the show, you know what, you'll get a kick out of this game. Definitely. And if you don't, you probably still will. Man, do I love Megaman. But, did you know he had a game on the Game Gear? It doesn't really have a proper title other than Mega Man Game Gear, and that is probably what caused this game not to catch on, that and, you know, the Game Gear. But that shouldn't be a problem, as it's fucking awesome. It unfortunately doesn't have any new Robot Masters and reuses 4 of them, as in There are only 4 Robot Masters in this game until you beat them and you got 2 more, and those are also reused from prior games. You look past that and you look past the sort of smaller screen, which makes things hard. You have a fucking awesome Megaman game. It's almost like a remake of a few of the games in a way, which is really cool, and you got one hell of a Megaman game, and one of the best games on the Game Gear. Okay, now for the next 5 entries, I'm gonna have my boy Ramkit cover it. So, take it away.
We got another NES game with Gimmick, or Mr. Gimmick. Mr. Gimmick, as it's known here in the States, has the cartoony charm that the NES was known for, but didn't catch on like the others for whatever reason. Mr. Gimmick is also probably one of the rarest NES games, as it goes for hundreds of dollars on eBay. It's also worth noting that Mr. Gimmick got an HD remake sometime last year. Do check this one out.
I've got to work quickly, so I'm giving myself just 24 hours to try and save each one of them.
Double Dragon is one of the earliest beat-em-ups, and those games are just, as always, they're just great. However, Double Dragon Neon just never caught on as much as the others. Maybe it was that Double Dragon wasn't as popular as it was on the NES, or the fact that critics were negative due to this game feeling quite old, but its very loyal players seem to like how it felt like those older games. Rightfully so, Double Dragon Neon is Double Dragon as you love it. We all like Jontron, right? Remember his video about Nightshade?
Nightshade, the claws of... So, pathetic meddler, your career is over before it has begun. Damn you!
Yeah. Nightshade is actually really fun and underrated. Nightshade is a point-and-click adventure which isn't too common for the NES, but this game manages to do that really well. Not to mention, the combat for the NES is really awesome too. Jontron's video shitting on the game is hilarious, but you should try this game out for yourself.
Try and kiss you? No, you're leaning in again!
I didn't want to kiss!
This is the most uncomfortable fist fight I've ever been in.
One and only TurboGrafx 16 game happens to be a pinball game. This pinball game is called Alien Crush, and this game, Alien Crush, may be one of the greatest pinball games ever created. It's a pinball game that is alien themed with amazing backgrounds and amazing music as well. It's also worth noting that Alien's Crush got an awesome sequel called Devil's Crush that you should check out as well as this one.
I tear down the mouth with the bitch. For real. You can't even talk to the bitch. Nah. She fucking with boss.
Got you, girl! Excuse me?
The SNES had many JRPGs, whether it being Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, or Super Mario RPG, but not too many people talk about the illusion of Gaia. The illusion of Gaia is more similar to Chrono Trigger, but it's different when it comes to roaming around. Not to mention, the music is awesome and the bosses are really cool. If you like JRPGs, you should really check this game out.
We like shooters, right? Well, Wild Guns on the SNES is awesome. Wild Guns is a really fun rail shooter for the Super Nintendo with a Western theme and some good ass music. You can also play as 2 separate characters, like when you die as one character, you then play as the next character. And I will say this, they're not too different from each other, but that doesn't matter because it's still fun either way. It's not higher because it has a remake on the PS4, the PC, and the Nintendo Switch. That gives you more of a reason to play it.
Our youngest daughter, Josie. That's a grand total of 19, and I delivered every one of them.
The Nintendo 64 was known for its 3D platformers, but not at all for the 2D ones. That's probably why Mischief Makers didn't catch on. In Mischief Makers, you play as Marina Lightyear, or something like that. It's Marina something. And it's a 2D platforming side-scroller where you shake your enemies. You don't really jump on them, attack them, or rip their fucking spinal cords out like in Mortal Kombat. You just shake them. And every second of it is fun, because it's unique. Mischief Makers is such a fun N64 game that despite being a 2D game on a 3D platforming system most of the time, should have had more eyes on it.
And we'll slap 5 there. Then afterwards we'll hit the bars.
That sounds good to me. I'm 18 and I'm ready to do some living. We are gonna raise more hell than Hellraiser.
Remember like 10 minutes ago when I talked about Castlevania Bloodlines and I said you'll hear Castlevania again in this video? Well, here's Castlevania Order of Ecclesia now. Order of Ecclesia is an interesting Castlevania game where you don't play as any of the Belmonts or, any of the Morrises that I mentioned earlier. But you play as Shinoa, and it's also, the way you traverse through levels is a lot different from normal Castlevania games. There are different mechanics as well, like summoning shit and also using a sword. It takes more inspiration from Symphony of the Night, which is the best Castlevania game. And this is also one of the best Castlevania games out there, and you should definitely check it out. Also, you look at this, do you think it's a DS game? No, you don't. But it is.
NB17. All over again.
Clash at Demonhead. How do you hear that name and not want to play it? Clash at Demonhead is a side-scrolling platforming game for the NES where you play as this character that kind of actually looks like Goku, to be honest. And it's a lot of fun. The enemies are cool, and it's got some inspired enemies, good-ass music, nice visuals for the NES, and it's just so much fun. It's also one of the rarest and most expensive games on the NES, and it deserves to be played. It goes for hundreds of dollars on eBay, but do try it out if you find a way to.
Introducing TurboGrafx 16, the next generation video game system.
Way earlier on in this list, like in part 2, when we had Pat Luigi in there, he actually mentioned the Sega channel when talking about Garfield Caught in the Act. And he also said there was going to be more games from the Sega channel on this list. Well, we're almost towards the end of the list and I haven't mentioned the Sega channel again. But here we are with another game from the Sega channel, with Pulseman. Pulseman is a game that never really came out in the US, only through the Sega channel, which means this game is no longer available as the Sega channel was the first dose into digital gaming, and that was from the 90s, so take a wild guess how that is doing right now. However, that does suck, as Pulseman is a really good game. Pulseman is a side-scroller in a way, but you've got some mechanics like being able to turn into an electric ball and riding these lines that you see in the gameplay right now. I'm not sure how to describe it, but you can see it. And that sounds dumb, but trust me, it actually adds a lot to the gameplay. This game was actually re-released on the Wii Shop channel, but that's, the Wii Shop channel. There isn't really an easy way to play this game, aside from the old emulation route, so do try that one.
Number 15. Number 15. Number 15.
In case you didn't get it by now, there's a lot of NES games on the list. We got another one with Shatterhand. Shatterhand just looks like the kind of game that should have been a hit on the NES, but for whatever reason, it wasn't. Maybe it was a stupid fucking ass box art. I mean, look at this shit. Would you want to buy this? That's the only reason I can think of, though, as the game is a lot of fun, even if a little difficult. Seriously, no one talks about how difficult this game is because, I mean, well, no one talks about it because no one talks about the game in general, so of course. Shatterhand is a lot of fun, though, so do try this one out.
So, you're supposed to be Tom's best friend that he won't shut up about. Well, I don't see the appeal. That is very gross!
Earlier, Ramkit talked about the illusion of Gaia. Well, there is another game like that one, and it's also on the Super Nintendo. It's called Terranigma. Terranigma, similar to the illusion of Gaia, is a JRPG by the Enix side of Square Enix for the Super Nintendo. The difference here, though, is that the gameplay is a lot quicker, the combat is different, and the roaming is different. Terranigma is a very fun game, and probably one of the most underrated and overlooked JRPGs of all time. Vice Project Doom. That's an interesting name. When you hear that name, do you think of a game in some sort of city setting and you play as a pirate? I doubt you think of that. But lo and behold, here we are with a game called Vice Project Doom, and that is the case. And it's awesome. Vice Project Doom is an awesome side-scroller with nice combat as in like the way you use your sword. Not to mention, the music is awesome, and you have an NES game more people absolutely should have played. But it's still not the last NES game on this entire list.
19 men attacked our country. The 12 of you will be the first ones to fight back.
How do you love your family and leave them to go to war?
This was one game I had higher, but I lowered it for a reason I'll get into later. But man, do I love Bully. If you don't know, you might think Bully has you bullying people as, you know, the whole premise of the game. And though that's a side option you could choose to do in the game, just for fun, you play as Jimmy Hopkins, who is trying to stop bullying. What's even more interesting is that he's trying to stop bullying in a school where bullying is a common occurrence, like very common. It was also developed by Rockstar Games, so in terms of how it plays, think GTA, but without the accessibility to certain vehicles, weapons, and stuff like that, and it's also rated T. Out of any game, not just like Rockstar, or any game on this list, I mean like any game in general, out of any game that has been released but never got a sequel, I feel like this one probably deserves it probably the most. The only reason it's not higher, and it didn't make the top 10, is because Bully has been re-released as Bully Scholarship Edition, as well as also being re-released on some digital stores. But it's still an underrated gem. If and when there's a sequel to this game, you bet your ass I'll be ready.
Number 11. Your father will die.
I've covered the other two Gargoyles Quest games, and now covering the third with Demon's Crest. Not even called fucking Gargoyles Quest. That doesn't matter though, cause, let me explain. Demon's Crest is the final game on here that you play as Firebrand from Ghosts and Goblins, or within me and a few of my friends, how he's better known as Cockblock. In Demon's Crest, Firebrand is searching for the Crests of Power, which have been stolen by a rival demon of his. explaining why Firebrand is the protagonist. Each Crest gives Firebrand new abilities, such as flying or swimming or so on, which really changes up the gameplay. Demon's Crest is one game you should definitely check out, and if you have Switch Online, you totally can. Well, that'll be it for this part of the top 110 hidden gems. Come back next week, or not even next week, this Friday, hopefully, Friday or Saturday, we'll get top 10. Bye, guys.